The first thing Emily noticed when she pushed open the door was the silence. It wasn't the kind of silence you expect in a house with newborn twins. It was warm, soft, almost sacred. She had come to drop off a contract for a renovation job she was hiring out. The recommendation had been clear: ask for Daniel, the single dad. He's the best. But when she stepped into the small, dimly lit living room, she stopped cold. On the worn carpet, a man lay on his back, broad shoulders, rough hands, boots kicked off by the door. Nestled on each side of him, tucked into the crook of each arm, were two tiny babies, no more than a few months old. Their chubby fists clutched his t-shirt, their breathing steady against his chest. There was no crib in sight. No fancy bassinet. Just a few folded blankets on the floor. Emily froze, not because she was shocked, but because there was something in the scene that felt pure. This was not a man who was resting. This was a man who was protecting. She didn't mean to speak, but the words slipped out. "Why are you sleeping on the floor?" Daniel stirred slightly, opening his eyes. For a moment, he looked like he wasn't sure if this was real. He blinked, then smiled faintly, careful not to move the babies. "They won't sleep unless they're near me," he said softly. "I sold the bed last month to pay for their formula. Floor's not so bad." Emily's chest tightened. She had met plenty of people in her business, wealthy contractors, investors, corporate partners, but she had never met anyone who said something like that with such ease, like it was the most normal thing in the world. She crouched down, lowering her voice. "You're a vet, right? Afghanistan?" He nodded. "Yeah. Got back 2 years ago. Their mom left before the twins turned 1 month. Guess I wasn't the life she wanted." The babies stirred a little, and Daniel instinctively patted their backs, humming something low, almost like a lullaby. Emily couldn't remember the last time she'd seen anyone so gentle. But there was something else, something that hit her harder than she expected. She realized she had walked in thinking she was the one who had more to give. But here was this man, with almost nothing, giving everything. And she couldn't walk away from that. 2 weeks later, Daniel was finishing a small repair job on Emily's property when she asked him to come inside. He hesitated at the doorway, eyes widening. The small living room he'd been using as a bedroom was gone, replaced with 2 brand new cribs, a proper bed, soft rugs, and a rocking chair. Emily handed him a set of keys. "It's yours," she said simply. "You don't owe me a thing. Just promise me you'll keep doing what you're doing, loving them like that." Daniel's voice caught. "Why?" "Because," Emily said, "kindness like yours, it's worth more than anything money can buy." The kids had been fed, changed, and tucked into their new cribs, but still. Just like always, they ended up back in his arms before the night was over. It wasn't that they needed him there to sleep, it was that he needed them there. They were his anchor in a world that had felt like it was drifting away. He thought about the day Emily walked in. How embarrassed he'd been that she saw him on the floor, surrounded by bottles, blankets, and the chaos of single fatherhood. How he'd expected judgment, maybe even pity. But she'd just looked at him like he was doing something extraordinary. And now this. He glanced at the keys on the nightstand, his new home. It still felt unreal. People didn't just do this. Not for him. Not for anyone like him. In the quiet, he whispered to the twins, "One day, you'll understand. Not everyone will have much to give, but when they give from the heart, it's everything." The room smelled faintly of new wood and fresh paint. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. Daniel closed his eyes and realized something that made his chest tighten, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time since returning from war, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. And it all began the moment someone cared enough to stop and see him. Morning sunlight spilled across the room, casting a golden glow over the cribs. The twins stirred, their tiny hands reaching out as if searching for him even in their sleep. Daniel slipped out of bed carefully, checking on each of them before heading to the kitchen. There, on the counter, was a note from Emily. "Breakfast is in the fridge. Thought you could use a break today. P.S. The rocking chair is for you too, every hero deserves somewhere to rest." He smiled, shaking his head. Hero. He'd never thought of himself that way. He'd just been doing what any parent would, protecting his kids. But maybe, just maybe, that was the point. Later that day, Emily stopped by to drop off some paperwork for his next job. She found him in the rocking chair, one baby asleep against his chest, the other giggling in his lap as he made faces. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there, taking in the scene, the man who had been sleeping on a hard floor now surrounded by warmth, comfort, and love. When Daniel finally looked up, he caught her watching. "Something on your mind?" he asked with a smile. Emily shook her head. "Just, glad I walked through that door." And in that moment, Daniel realized it wasn't just his life that had changed. Sometimes kindness doesn't stop at the person you help, it ripples outward, touching everyone it meets. For him, for Emily, and for those twins, that ripple had only just begun. Weeks turned into months, and the small house began to feel alive in ways Daniel had never imagined. The walls that once echoed with quiet now carried the sound of baby laughter, Emily's occasional visits, and the hum of new beginnings. Daniel took on more renovation work, slowly building his business again. He'd come home covered in sawdust and sweat, only to be greeted by squeals and outstretched arms. No matter how hard the day had been, those little smiles made it worth it. One evening, as he was fixing a loose kitchen cabinet, Emily stopped by unannounced. She carried a bag of groceries in one hand and a small box in the other. "This is for you," she said, setting the box on the counter. Inside was a framed photo, Daniel asleep in the rocking chair, both twins curled up on him. Emily must have taken it during one of her visits. "I figured you'd want to remember this stage," she said. "Before they grow up too fast." Daniel's throat tightened. He'd never had a family photo before. Not like this. He looked up at her, his voice low. "I don't know how to repay you." "You already have," she replied. "You reminded me that money's not the most valuable thing we can give. It's time. It's love. And you give that without even thinking twice." That night, Daniel hung the photo on the wall, right above the twins' cribs. Every time he saw it, he was reminded of how far they had come, not because of luck, but because of the courage to keep going and the kindness of a stranger who refused to stay a stranger.